Justin Jefferson will be catching passes from a new quarterback this season, while Kyler Murray and Justin Herbert are currently left with an empty wide receiver room. We will tell you why you should or should not be worried about their fantasy outlook on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and I'm not doing this. I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst for NFL Network.
I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy betting, free agency, and draft for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. We have a good episode today because we've gotten through a majority of free agency now. Like all the big names have pretty much signed. We know where the quarterbacks have landed. And the big key takeaway here is that Justin Jefferson, a guy that most likely is going to go top 3 in your draft this next year, is no longer with his long-term quarterback, Kirk Cousins. So let's talk about this situation here with him. First, let me ask you this, Vinny. Who do you hope is Justin Jefferson's quarterback in 2024, assuming he's staying with the Vikings?
Yeah, I think I would want it to be the rookie first-round pick and not Sam Darnold. No offense to Sam Darnold, but I think the rookie would target Justin Jefferson a lot. And we've seen this before, right? I mean, C.J. Stroud kind of settled in to his go-to guys and really elevated Tank Dell and, of course, Nico Collins throughout the season. Now, the other thing you consider here is we don't have a lot of sample size with Justin Jefferson working with non-Kirk Cousins quarterbacks because he was hurt at the same time they were cycling through Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullins and Jaron Hall for a brief moment. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen. That said, I don't know if any of those quarterbacks kind of resemble their current situation here because Sam Darnold is okay, and maybe he'll be better in the system now that he's with Josh McCown and Kevin O'Connell, and he might be okay. But we know Sam Darnold has a limited ceiling here. So I think you want the rookie because I think if the rookie sees Justin Jefferson and he's getting open all the time, he's going to throw to him all the time. And there are a couple options here. I think if they trade up and they did get that second first rounder in the deal with the Browns, then you're looking at potential move up all the way to number 2 here with the Commanders and getting Drake May. If not, they can probably stay put and get J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix, their choice there later in the draft at number 11. So they've got some options here to go that direction. Now, I would be excited about the rookie coming in. Like Sam Darnold, again, there's also potential that he's going to just be a quick bridge quarterback, wait until that rookie is ready. It could be as early as week 1. So I want to see a rookie with Justin Jefferson, especially a big arm guy. I think McCarthy can really push it downfield to him. Drake May can do everything. So if either of those guys land there, I think I'll feel a little bit better about Justin Jefferson. The other thing is, Michelle, if you're not paying your quarterback, you can pay Justin Jefferson a lot of money, and you can appease him a little bit for not having Kirk Cousins in that sense.
Yeah, I think the best way for them to go, they might have to, I mean, the rumors are that they're looking to trade up maybe for J.J. McCarthy, right? They might have to move up just to be able to get him. So maybe we see them move up to 4 or move up a little bit here. But I do think that's the best route. If they go into the season with Sam Darnold and they waited until the second or third round to go with a quarterback, and they're really just going into this year with the bridge quarterback, Sam Darnold, that's going to make me a lot more worried about Jefferson than if they get a guy like J.J. McCarthy or even move up further for, like you said, a Drake May. But what can we expect out of Justin Jefferson this year? Can we expect his typical 1,600 receiving yards, 8 touchdown season? And you brought up, like, we don't have a big sample size without Kirk Cousins, but towards the end of the year, he was playing a lot with Nick Mullins, had a lot of great games, 84 yards, 141 yards and a touchdown, 192 yards and a touchdown there to end the season in week 18 with Nick Mullins. So we have seen huge games out of him with Nick Mullins. Now, and Kirk Cousins. So I don't think he is super quarterback dependent. I think he's going to get the targets and the receiving yards. I will say my biggest worry would be the touchdowns for him. So in that case, when we're looking at the top here, when we're looking at who we draft, would you go with CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson?
That's a good question. I mean, I think Justin Jefferson just has so much upside. And I know CeeDee Lamb is playing with Dak Prescott, and that helps. But I think with the Cowboys, there's a little bit of concern there that duplicating that season is going to be difficult. I think Justin Jefferson, if you go by the pure talent, and if I'm going to use a tiebreaker, I'm going to use talent. And I think Jefferson's a little bit more talented than Lamb. It's close, but I think Jefferson is the more explosive player. And he was definitely very consistent when he was healthy last year, right? I mean, he's a guy that can put up 150 yards in a blink here. And he also doesn't need to score to be very effective. We like him to score more. He's not been a big scorer so far, but partly because he's not been on the field last year. And then we had Adam Thielen, who was a big touchdown guy before, but now he's without Adam Thielen. So I think Jefferson has a chance for more touchdowns. Again, I think the volume will still be there. The production will be there. This is a pass-first offense. I think in general, this offense could end up being better around the quarterback, and therefore the quarterback – he's going to be lifted and put up some numbers as well. So if he stays healthy, I'm going all the way with Jefferson to outscore CeeDee Lamb this year. I don't think there's much doubt for me. Again, he's just too good of a player. And you mentioned all that work with Mullins. Now, in a weird way, Darnold was also in the 49ers system there. Mullins came from there. He adjusted well to the Stram system. I think Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, wherever they go around the league, they're assistants really help them get prepared. So whether it's Darnold or a rookie, I feel like Justin Jefferson is just going to explode here. And again, what would really help, Michelle, if they make him happy and give him the money so he's not having this hanging over him this season.
Yeah, I would say I'd still go Tyreek Hill, first wide receiver off the board, and I'm still taking CeeDee Lamb over Justin Jefferson with just the quarterback concerns. I think right there is where I'm at that line between. I think I cannot push down Justin Jefferson too much further. It'd be close between him and a guy like Jamar Chase or Amon-Ra St. Brown, but that would be a hard decision to make. But let's go to Jordan Addison now, because we're saying we're not too worried about Justin Jefferson. He should still be a top 3 wide receiver next year. But Jordan Addison, he had a really solid rookie year. He stepped up somewhat when Jefferson was out with an injury, but without Kirk Cousins, and considering it's either Sam Darnold or a rookie wide receiver, I think I'm out on Jordan Addison next year unless he falls really far in drafts. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, I would consider him as a wide receiver 3, but I wouldn't feel comfortable if he was my lone wide receiver 3. I would want him with some options here, just because again the Vikings offense I think is still going to be pretty good. I mean, their offensive line is pretty decent. You have Aaron Jones now adds a little bit of element out of the backfield, so you got to respect that. I think a little bit more than you did in the previous running game, and then you look at Addison, again, very good route runner. I think he's just very talented. He's a first-round pick for a reason as well. So his talent can also stand out a little bit here with either quarterback. And again, we point to the Stroud, Dell, Collins example. It can be done and get those 2 receivers getting going. So it really depends. A lot is variable, right, on that first-round quarterback. How good is he going to be? Because we know how good Darnold can be. And okay, if it's Darnold and they're going to go bridging with the quarterback here, you're not going to be as hot on Addison, even though there's 2 USC guys playing with each other. But I think you would probably look at this instead being more of an upside here if a young quarterback comes in, because youth usually kind of follows youth here and they connect pretty well. So that's something we'll look at. We saw that with Dell and Stroud. So I think with Addison, I think if you're going to bump him up a little bit, I think you want to see him with the rookie quarterback versus Darnold, where I think Jefferson, I'm not saying he's totally quarterback proof, because I don't think anyone is if you get bad enough at that position. But between Darnold and a rookie, I think Jefferson is a lot safer here than Addison. But one thing I'll mention also, Michelle, TJ Hawkinson, we'll have to see what his development is here too, because his injury might linger. They said that it might take him more than week 1 to be ready for the season. And we know, again, if it's a rookie quarterback, that's going to bump up Hawkinson a little bit more because, again, security blanket and all that. So Addison might be ending up as the third target here when you look at it overall between Jefferson, Hawkinson, and Addison.
Yeah, and I don't wanna, so with the CJ Stroud thing, it's like, okay, that's more the exception than the rule, right? Normally,
Yeah.
wide receivers with rookie quarterbacks do not do well in fantasy. It's hard for them to even be a top 24 wide receiver with a rookie guy. Now, there's obviously your exceptions with your Justin Herberts and your CJ Stroud, but think of how many quarterbacks play as rookies and especially those early first-round guys, and it doesn't typically work out very well. There's, of course, the exception. So Caleb Williams would have to be the exception for this to work out with. Oh, no. Caleb Williams would be with the Bears. I don't know what I just was thinking there. JJ McCarthy, if that's the guy that ends up going there, or Bo Nix, or if they move up for Drake May, they would have to be the exception. And I think what I was going to say, I think the one guy that we could see there being an exception is with Caleb Williams, with the Keenan Allen and the DJ Moore. But even then, would be hard to get to as well. We're going to talk about a couple offenses in our next segment that they have literally no wide receivers in the room right now. That's the Cardinals and the Chargers. We're going to figure out how in the world they can help out their quarterbacks this upcoming year. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Game Time app. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you'll have. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. And tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, you just create an account on the Game Time app, redeem code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So we talked a little bit about the Chargers offense on the podcast over the last couple of days here because they're just giving away their wide receivers, right? Keenan Allen gone, Mike Williams cut. They're left with Quentin Johnson and Josh Palmer. And the thing is, they don't really have any tight ends because Hayden Hurst is their top guy and Will Disley. And then they got rid of Austin Eckler as well. So they're sitting there with Gus Edwards. All their pass catchers are gone. I do think the Cardinals are in a little bit better of a position with Kyler Murray because at least they have Michael Wilson, who had a solid of enough rookie season as a third round guy last year. They have Greg Dortch, and they're sitting in that number 4 spot to add Marvin Harrison Jr. if they want to. Plus, they have a great receiving tight end in Trey McBride, plus James Conner, who's a decent receiving back as well. But is this enough? Let's say the Cardinals go with a wide receiver at number 4, and let's say the Chargers go with a wide receiver at the number 5 overall pick. Is that enough for these two guys to help them in fantasy to be a top 5 guy next year?
Well, Kyler Murray has that potential because of the running, and I think some of that will be restored a little bit. That he's fully healthy, no worry about the knee issue. He looked pretty good orchestrating this offense down the stretch, and basically with McBride as his one key target here. Marquise Brown was injured and faded. Michael Wilson was a rookie, so he wasn't quite ready for a bigger role either. So now you get Wilson settling in, still a very talented receiver. It can be a good number 2 here. McBride should be locked in as one of the best, most productive tight ends. And then you had Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, this guy is that good to be a game changer for a quarterback where all of a sudden you'll see the numbers really start to rack up here in the passing game. I think Wilson can be a really good number 2. So there'll be a nice upside offense with that trio of Harrison, McBride, and Wilson. So I'm not too worried about Kyler. I'm not going to say necessarily he'll be in the top 5, but I think top 10, top 12 as a QB1, that you'd feel a little bit better, assuming the running comes to that floor level that we're used to with Kyler Murray. So no worries there. I think the Chargers really worry me here because, again, offensive change to Greg Roman. We said the run-oriented nature is going to come out. Gus Edwards in the power game. They're not necessarily going to just spread it around and throw it a ton here to the receivers. And it may be difficult to sustain more than one wide receiver here in this offense, maybe a receiver and a half when you include a tight end that could sustain here is something you look at for the Chargers. So it's tough right now. I mean, you're right. They have nothing. I mean, Quentin Johnson has a lot to prove as a first-round pick, and they're going to have to invest another first-round pick because of that. Josh Palmer, okay player, but a different offense that he's also learning here under Roman versus what they had with Kellen Moore. And then you have not a lot of other guys here.
They have
Yeah,
4 wide
Darius Davis.
receivers on the
Yeah,
roster.
4 wide
4.
receivers are on the roster. So the good news for the Chargers is they could double down on receivers in this draft. They could go first round. They could come back right there on day 2 and add another key receiver. So I think they'll be calculated. This is why I still think that if they want to go in this direction, and if they think Brock Bowers is a better overall prospect than Malik Neighbors or Roman Dunze, they could go that direction. Again, this is Greg Roman. So Mark Andrews was the centerpiece. So they go out and get the tight end first, then come back with a receiver, have some hopes for Johnson as a field stretcher, they could go in that direction. But Michelle, I think the best fantasy receiver for the Chargers is not on the roster right now. That's my take, because again, Palmer and Johnson are holdovers from the old regime. I mean, they also got rid of their GM, so Tom Telesco isn't there anymore. So they're moving forward totally with Harbaugh and Roman and what they want to do in their front office with their personnel. They're not committed to any of these guys that were there before, right? Clearly, we're not when they moved on from Williams and Eckler and Allen pretty quickly, and Gerald Everett as well. So they're rebooting. They're blowing this thing up. So I actually wouldn't mind if they went out and got Bowers at number 5, came back with a wide receiver and one of their next 2 picks, and then we're in business, right? Then you would feel Brock Bowers as a Trey McBride type, right? Producing immediately as a rookie. If it's a wide receiver, we're going to like. We talked about that, right? Whoever lands in that spot as the go-to receiver, even if he's a rookie, we're going to like that. And right now, it would be Odunze or Neighbors or Bowers that has the inside track to be the Chargers' leading receiver.
Yeah, with them adding both Hayden Hurst and Will Disley, it seems silly, but I do think that takes them out of Brock Bowers because they have not added a wide receiver. They have 4 wide receivers.
When you get Hayden Hurst and Will Disley,
I know,
you can't add any more tight ends.
I know, but it's such a gross offseason.
You're set at the position, so you're good.
In terms
don't forget about Donald Parham Jr. He's around a
Yeah.
little bit. So
in terms of these other positions, though, the Mike Wilson, the Josh Palmer, and the Quentin Johnson, these guys are going to have opportunity, right? They're going to have opportunity to show that they deserve targets. They're probably going to get targets if they should get them or not. Now, if you had to rank these 3 guys in terms of who you're interested in 2024, they're all going to be sleepers, right? None of these guys are going to be drafted too early. But how would you rank them in terms of your interest in them for 2024 fantasy?
I think I can just see Harbaugh and Roman being really annoyed with Quentin Johnston and just saying, okay, he can stretch the field, but what are we getting here, right? He could turn into what we've seen with Roman, and how long am I going to wait for this Rashad Bateman-like guy to produce for me like I waited in Baltimore? So I think Bateman is a better receiver, and he's not even getting a lot of looks in Baltimore. So when you look at Johnson, I don't know if they'll be all that committed. Where Palmer's kind of been their dirty work guy, right? When Mike Williams and Allen have been hurt, I mean, he's the guy that's come through a little bit for fantasy. I'm not saying he's gone off, but there's something good technical about him, right? He's not big play dependent. So if I was going to draft a Chargers receiver, not name their rookie, I think I would look at Palmer maybe as a deep wide receiver 3. But again, keep in mind, there could be there's a lot of vacated targets. We know that, but there's also going to be some vacated targets in sense of not throwing the ball as much, right? So some targets are going to get swallowed up by just running the ball more. So that's something to keep in mind here. So I don't know if I would want to invest in more than one Chargers pass catcher here in 2024.
Yeah, I think Josh Palmer is going to be that guy that you can get late in the draft, and he could be a really solid, especially if you play in a 3 wide receiver league. He would be a really solid wide receiver 3 to have in that spot, or maybe a flex spot. I mean, when he started to get needed, right, once there started to be injuries, which was very soon with Mike Williams, but he got hurt in week 2, didn't he? But 66, 77, 60, 133 yards. And then he got hurt in week 8 and he was gone until week 15. By the time he got back, Justin Herbert was gone. Had one huge game with Easton Stick, 113 yards and a touchdown, 2 mediocre games with him after that. But I do think he's viable. He's a viable option. Not exciting, doesn't have a huge ceiling, but he's okay. If he's a wide receiver 2 for the Chargers, say they take a Dunze or Neighbors and he's a wide receiver 2, they don't really have other pass catchers. I think he could be a really sneaky option where a solid, let's say he finishes at like wide receiver 24, 25. I could see that happening. The other two, Quentin Johnston's just such a, he could be huge, right? But it's so hard to see a guy that was that bad as a rookie that just, they typically don't end up doing anything in their career.
Yeah, I mean, I need to see a lot more out of him. And again, if they have to go right back to the well to take a first round receiver after cutting 2 guys, that's not great for Quentin Johnston. Now, Michael Wilson, look, the Cardinals offense, I think, is very related to the Browns with Drew Petzing there. So what do we see with the Browns? A lot of Amari Cooper, a lot of David Njoku, not a lot else, right? So that could be something that recreates itself here with a lot of Marvin Harrison Jr., and a lot of Trey McBride, and then a little bit of Michael Wilson trickling down to some other receivers. It does help him that random guys might not be in the mix. They still have Greg Dortch, but no more Rondell Moore and some guys that would annoyingly steal targets there. So it's okay. I just can't get excited about Michael Wilson. I think, again, this may not be as run-heavy offense as we see with the other situation with the Chargers, but I think the Cardinals could also be run-oriented. And again, a lot of their offense funneled through 2 guys there, the passing game with Harrison and McBride. So a lot of good things to watch out there, but at least these teams are sitting pretty, right? When you pick number 4, number 5, you're going to get that wide receiver or playmaker that you want for your quarterback. So got to love that. And that had to factor in their decisions and moving on from wide receivers. In our final segment, we will talk about 3 offenses that need to go to work. They haven't done anything great so far in free agency. Luckily, they've got some draft picks to correct that. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right. No cap on this 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees do apply. And now for some legal information. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. All right, Michelle, let's get into those 3 teams that, look, they could have done a little bit more. I'm not saying their state is terrible. Well, one is, but 2 of these teams are okay, and they didn't really have to force anything. They also didn't have the money to do so. None of these teams had the money to do so. But let's start with the first team that I think that I need a little bit more from this team to trust their offense here. It's the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, they cut Michael Gallup, which is okay. He wasn't doing anything. But their receiving core is thin. We don't know what you're going to get from these guys again with CeeDee Lamb leading the way. We know Jake Ferguson's there. These are key targets that are still on the up and up here, but their offensive line was a bit gutted as well. Tyron Smith goes. They lost their center, Tyler Biadasz. So it's a different type of Cowboys offense. I think they need a little help. Remember when Tyron Smith was out a few years ago with Prescott there? Like, he really struggled. So they hope that Tyler Smith can take over. So what do you think? I mean, the Cowboys, we have to drop them down a notch, I would think, from this free agency period.
Yeah, their offensive line, they have to do a lot of work on that. I mean, it's
Yeah,
almost given that they have to use a first round pick on an offensive lineman. That's my biggest worry with them. Also, the fact that they just literally don't have a running back. And this
that's also
class is
there.
like full of running backs. I don't really know who they just expect to bring in to take the workload because right now their starting running back is Rico Dowdle. And they just finally re-signed him. I mean, it took a while. I figured they'd bring him back, but it took a while for them to do it. And they're like, okay, I guess we have to have a body in here, right?
Yeah,
So that's him, and we'll see what they do. But they're gonna have to use a top 3 round pick on a running back, most likely, since they haven't brought in anyone else. But they have offensive line needs. Jalen Tolbert again becomes their wide receiver 3 with Gallup gone. Tolbert got a shot as a rookie. He looked a little bit better in the limited role as a second year. It seems they have some faith in him, but that might be the 3 across for them: CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, and Jalen Tolbert this
yeah.
year, because they have to focus on this offensive line and find a running back. But the O line makes me a little bit nervous about Dak Prescott because Dak Prescott was on fire for fantasy in that second half of the year. He's going to be drafted early. Does the offensive line change how well he can perform this year? Maybe so.
Yeah, that's a team we're definitely going to be watching, and I think you're right. They're going to have to invest early and often in offense in the draft. I mean, it just makes sense. I mean, they didn't go after a veteran running back, and they didn't go after a veteran offensive lineman, a tackle or guard or center. So something to look at there. Now, the Dolphins took some hits on their offensive line as well. Connor Williams has not been re-signed. They lost Robert Hunt, a very good guard, in free agency. The Panthers, their big move, Michelle, was adding Jonu Smith after the Falcons dropped him. They actually lost their third receiver, Cedric Wilson. So he's gone. He went to the Saints. So I am not sure what you can get. And we talked about this is a great landing spot for a tight end if they could get one. And now they're stuck with Jonu Smith being their lead tight end here. So I'm not sure what you're going to get. You want to see their weapons expand for Tua. I think they're okay, obviously, with the running game with Devin Achan and Raheem Mostert. But man, I would like a little bit more around Tua with up front and these weapons to really feel good about more good Dolphins production, especially when Tua wasn't quite up there with Dak in scoring.
Yeah, I know. I would have liked to see them add someone more exciting than Johnny Smith. I will
Yeah,
say they're in the situation right now with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle that they really couldn't add to bring in another free agent wide receiver on any money, right?
yeah,
Already paying Tyreek Hill a ton. Jalen Waddle is due for an extension. This is his first year of eligibility. They can wait out another year or so, but they're going to be paying 2 wide receivers. So this is a perfect draft class for them to take a wide receiver. Probably not in the first, but second, third round, they're going to be able to find that really good wide receiver 3. I think that will help out Tua. They could still use that first round pick on a tight end, maybe a JT Sanders from Texas, but Jonnu Smith. I don't know why they went after him so fast. They did at least backfill their center position with Aaron Brewer. Connor Williams was dealing with the late year ACL tear anyway, so he wouldn't have been ready to start the year. So they filled that position. That's good. Still have to worry about the guard position a little bit, but they're not in too bad of a spot as long as Terran Armstead doesn't retire at the offensive line. Still need to fix it up a bit, but they do have. I think they are able to fill their wide receiver needs through this draft. It's different than when you're looking at, the Cardinals and the Chargers. They need that true wide receiver 1 and others. Well, the Dolphins really just need that wide receiver 3 and maybe a more exciting tight end playmaker.
Yeah, I mean, we're not saying go nuts. I mean, these Cowboys and Dolphins pretty much did produce pretty well without many changes, but we'd like to see a little bit more. We're greedy here in fantasy football. We want the good offenses to give us more, not less than they did the previous season. Now, one offense that I'm going to feel pretty certain is going to give us less or something we don't want, the Broncos. This was pretty ugly, the way they just dumped Russell Wilson, and they're still paying Russell Wilson more than the Steelers are at this point. Jared Stidham and Ben DiNucci. Those are their 2 quarterbacks on the roster. They were all these bridge quarterbacks. 22 quarterbacks changed teams. The Broncos didn't add one of them despite this situation. So they didn't have the money. I mean, they ate all the dead money. They had to cut Justin Simmons. They traded Jerry Jeudy. Okay, that doesn't really do much because he was just for their offense, but they're left with Cortland Sutton, hoping that Tim Patrick can return from a knee injury, hoping that Marvin Mims can take a step up with a big quarterback change. So all these hopes and dreams here, and then they stuck on the same backfield here with the same three: Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Samaje Perine. I don't know what you're going to get from these guys going forward. Offensive line was a big disappointment last year, despite adding Ben Powers, Mike McGlinchey. Now they lose their best one in Lloyd Cushenberry. So I don't know, Michelle. Like, this is a team that I may want very little exposure to. I don't care who the first round quarterback is. I just think it's another disaster waiting to happen, and just a team that I'm going to avoid as much as possible, I think, in fantasy, no matter what happens.
Yeah, besides the Patriots, this might be the next grossest team. And at least the Patriots have a top 3 pick to figure out their quarterback position. The Broncos are going to be fighting against the Raiders and the Vikings to see who gets the 4th best quarterback in this draft class. And then after that, I mean, there is a pretty significant drop off of what people expect to happen, for these quarterbacks to be ready in year one. And they don't really have a star anywhere. There's no star in the running back. Cortland Sutton is by far their best wide receiver. And really, with him, he's not going to help out a rookie too much unless there's a guy that's just willing to come in and chuck it to him like Russell Wilson was. That's the kind of guy Cortland Sutton is. Like, you need to just believe in him to come down with the ball. He's not the greatest separator, right? He's a good wide receiver when you give him the chance, but that's not really what young quarterbacks are known to do. So I hate the situation for any young quarterback coming in. And Jarrett Stidham and Ben DiNucci, just those are not starting quarterbacks in this league. So right now this offense is disgusting. I know people are excited that Tim Patrick's going to get a chance. It's now back-to-back devastating injuries for him that he's had. I don't think he's going to all of a sudden get better and put up a ton of stats with Jarrett Stidham and Ben DiNucci and coming off 2 serious injuries when he was really never anything more than just a guy to begin with. This offense is disgusting, and I don't think they can really fix it in this year's draft. It's going to take a couple of years to be able to fix this.
Yeah, I mean, then you have even a split tight end situation where, Greg Dulcich's a good athlete, but he can't stay healthy. And then for some reason, Sean Payton loves Adam Troutman. He loves himself some Adam Troutman. He's always going to be in the mix. And so we can't even count on that, right? It splits. You've got a banged up receiver and Patrick coming back from major injuries. Sutton is inconsistent. Marvin Mims is young. There's just not a lot to hang your helmet on this team at all. And that worries me. So we'll see. This might be it for Sean Payton if he can't prove that he's pushing in the right direction, because he's the guy who benched Wilson. So it's all going to be about that decision if the Broncos can turn around, but I don't see it this year.
No. And I'll actually feel bad if a rookie quarterback ends up there early, because I don't expect them to find much success with this supporting cast. But that is it for today's show. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Every day, Vinny and I will be back tomorrow with another fun episode. Bye, y'all.